Thank you, Sam, and welcome to Rachna. And as we've done with the previous speakers, if you could just say a couple of words about your background and then jump right in, and we'll encourage the audience to ask questions. If not, you'll get some from me, and we look forward to your presentation. So it's all yours.
Thank you so very much. I truly appreciate this opportunity. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon, good morning, greetings to whichever time zone you're in. My name is Rachna Mishra. I am a project director with WuXi Clinical. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I'm very, very excited for this opportunity and looking forward to present my thoughts and some slides that I've prepared on clinical research during COVID-19, some challenges and opportunities. So here's a brief background about me. I am very, very passionate about medical science. I did my medicine degree from India. And then after coming to the United States, I was involved in clinical research. I have a great variety of experience from phase 1 to phase 4 studies. And I think I'm a very, I try to find simple solutions to complex problems. So that I think is my biggest trait. And that's my motto. I try to make it easier for my clients, again, within the realms of our regulatory guidelines. And I just enjoy my life with my 2 boys and kids here in Austin. I'm also an avid traveler, and I like to travel across the globe. Before the pandemic hit us last year in early 2020. And as we have all seen, it's a new life now. So after COVID-19, our new normal is very different. We are all used to social distancing, which was a term that we have never heard before. We are all working remotely. Previously, it was a concept that many were trying to embrace, but now this has become more and more common. We stay home, stay safe. Those words are embarked not only on us adults, but even on our children who are now doing remote schools. And of course, there's virtual learning, virtual meetings, and virtual everything. I have attended virtual engagements and, virtual baby showers and whatnot. So I think the whole world is so different these days. And in spite of doing all of these and taking all these precautions, we have still seen around 150 million global cases of COVID-positive patients. And sadly, 1.35 million people have lost their lives to COVID as of this month. So again, as we know, there are current surges going in India and Philippines, and of course, US has remained number 1 for such a long time on the tally of the people who were affected with COVID and the lives lost. So this has affected the whole world, and it has shaken us up to look further into how we are going to be as an industry. So this is a small graph that kind of shows how or what is the recent impact of COVID-19 on our clinical research industry. So how many studies were there? As you can see, we emerged stronger as people after we were hit with COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 trials took the center stage in 2020. There were, as of 2021, February 2021, there were almost 5,000 studies registered that were investigating the coronavirus or COVID-19. In 2020, we definitely saw a massive shift in the way clinical trials are conducted, and that our industry was forced to adapt and change very quickly and accelerate because of that. We had a dire situation, and it was imperative that our industry had to think outside of the box on how are we going to run these trials? How can we find solution or vaccines to this virus at a very, very fast pace that we had never seen before? Our regulatory agencies across the world were trying to make sure that we find the right vaccinations, medications at the same time to keep our people and patients and subjects safe. So it was a time when the creative minds, the smartest minds in the world came together, and we saw the fastest startups happening around. The turnaround of the trials were so rapid, and then all of these trials, COVID-19 trials, were actually truly remotely monitored. So that was again a very big shift that we saw because of the COVID-19. This slide here shows the opportunities and the challenges that it presented to us. Since we ventured into this new era so quickly, there were definitely a lot of challenges that we had seen. So I have marked the challenges here in orange, as you can see. Some of the enrollment challenges that we have faced, clinical supplies and logistic challenges, lack of resources, of course, was a big challenge on how we were going to run these trials and how we are going to be successful during those times. And of course, there were some positives as well, such as there was a big global focus on healthcare. More than anything, people were more invested into their health, trying to find the most optimum solutions on how they can fight this virus and how they can come out of this pandemic as nations, as countries, as a world. Clinical research became front and center. Everyone was talking about it. It became a daily topic from kindergarten classroom to the presidents talking to the news reporters. They were all talking about clinical research and what we are doing and how fast we are progressing and which company is ahead and so on. But again, we have to keep in mind that all of this focus was mostly on the COVID-19 clinical research. And of course, because of that, there was a big rush of COVID-19 vaccination studies and trials across the globe. So we're going to talk more about it in the next few slides. This slide here is actually very, very close to me because some of the trials that we were working on as a project director, we experienced these challenges pretty much on all the trials that we worked on in 2020, 2021. There were thousands of COVID global trials, which led to an increased and huge demand of clinical trial lab supplies. There were worldwide lockdowns, especially in our developing countries, which caused a lot of production delays. There were shortage of lab supplies across the globe. Procuring these supplies for the trials became a huge challenge. We were working day and night very closely with our clinical logistic companies, trying to make sure that for the respective trials, we get everything procured in a timely manner and the trial runs without any hiccups. Most of these trials also had accelerated timelines, so they had very limited time to know what is needed for the trials and make arrangements, procure these items, get it to the lab, get the kits ready, and then get it shipped out. To which my next point is that the lab kit assembly units were also struggling and overwhelmed with the huge demands. They were short-staffed. They were again facing local regulations where they cannot work at 100% capacity. And at the same time, they were overwhelmed with the huge demand of the clinical trials. So they had to think outside of the box, come up with more units across the globe where they could do more of the lab kit assembly. Again, the problems did not stop there. We also saw that a lot of flights and couriers and flight carriers, those services were disrupted as well. So most of these shipments were delayed because there were either no flights at all or they were running at reduced capacity. So it was very, very difficult to get these items shipped to the right destination, to the right site across the globe. These are some of the challenges that were not as focal point earlier in the regular days. Occasionally we would get a hiccup here and there, but during COVID-19, the clinical lab supplies challenges really took a big hit, and we all could see how it was impacting our studies. And again, the customs and regulatory agencies were also very stringent, and they had to find out-of-the-box solutions on how they are going to accommodate and make amendments into their processes so we can have our drugs and our kits supplied to these studies in a timely fashion. Okay, on to my next slide. So the other challenge that we normally see on any study is the enrollment. We always say if the enrollment targets are met, studies, is a successful study. We make money, sponsor make money. We find the solution for the drug. Everyone is happy. But during COVID-19, that became a huge challenge for COVID studies and for all the other studies that were impacted as well. So we saw that sites across the world were closed, completely shut down for about 1 or 2 months with zero or very, very limited staff. So patients did not have access to the sites. Not all of these sites had systems and softwares in place where they could begin doing remote or telemedicine immediately. So some sites were equipped, but most of the sites were not. So during these 1 or 2 months when they were closed, behind the scenes, they were working day and night to make sure that they are getting their systems in place as per their country regulations so that they can then begin to do telemedicine or support their patients remotely as much as possible. Even the research staff that was assigned on these COVID trials, they had to prioritize the COVID trials over any of the other studies that they were working on. So yes, COVID trials took the center stage, but other studies did suffer because their resources were now assigned to the COVID studies. Patients were mostly homebound. They were very, very scared to even go to the hospital. The word hospital became synonymous with ventilators and people in warlike situations. So really people did not, or subjects or patients did not want to go to hospitals until it was very, very necessary, or any kind of clinic setting for that matter. They were very scared. So I think educating those patients that, okay, you can do telemedicine, you can still participate in clinical research trials without coming to the clinic. And that message had to be relayed and reiterated, and in a way that patients became more receptive to it. And then, of course, we also saw the regulatory agencies and boards were even closed for months, or they did not have enough members to come and do their reviews. So all of those essential reviews were also delayed, which again impacted the total timelines of the study. So as you can see, there were almost 67% trials that were delayed. 14% saw a direct hit with their enrollment numbers. They missed their timelines and they were delayed significantly. So now these were the challenges that we were facing. So as an industry, we had to bring our best minds together, our collective experiences in the industry, working very closely and trying to identify what are the challenges, think about it more proactively, and then figure out what solutions we can come up with, which are going to be more sustainable throughout this duration of the pandemic, and maybe even improvise later on. One of the things that came up very strongly during this time was the patient-centric approach. So previously, the way the clinical trials were run, they were more site-centric. So we focused on site selection, and then the sites reached out to the patient. We paid more attention to who the investigator is. Does the site have enough experience? So it was always more site-centric. But with the pandemic coming in, we had to make sure that now the approach is changing and we are making it more patient-centric approach. The patient takes the center stage. How do we do that? Of course, we had no other choice but to be more dependent on digital health technologies, using more smartphone tracking, more wearables and sensors and apps and such things. I know in Brazil we were doing a COVID-19 study where we had given oximeters to the patients, and it was connected to the app so that they would get information, or the study coordinators would get the readings instantaneously, and if the oxygen levels were dropping down, they would immediately reach out to the patient, and so on. So there was a huge reliance on use of digital technologies in the healthcare sector. Also, our biostats team and technicians and biometrics team, they tried to find or develop trials where there were more of virtual and digital endpoints that we were going to use to finally look at the metrics. And again, all of this was more patient-centric. We want to have a patient in the center point of all of the clinical studies, making it more of a holistic health approach, creating more awareness about the clinical research process, making sure that patient has full access to the investigator, to the site through telemedicine, and the drug supplies, IP, test, lab kits, all of those are getting delivered to the patient at their homes. So in some of the clinical trials that we were running, we used this approach. And some of the trials that were already ongoing, we used a hybrid model for those trials. So what we saw in 2020 and 2021, we are seeing again, is more and more trials are now either hybrid trials, or in future they're going to become more decentralized or completely remote monitoring trials. Right, so as I had previously explained in the last slide, we have to make these trials patient-centric, and we have to keep these trials as virtual as possible. So again, this slide kind of reiterates how we are going to achieve it. Of course, patient first, we start thinking about the patient. When we create our protocol, we must make sure or look into the points. How is the patient going to participate in the study? Are they able to going to do these labs remotely? How is their participation going to be impacted in the long run? Will they stay motivated to continue to participate in the trial? Are there going to be dropouts? And so on. Of course, these trials are going to be virtual, so we have to make sure that our CREs are trained to remotely monitor these sites. We have to train our site staff in a way that they can support the patients remotely, doing telemedicine, doing remote visits, telephone calls, and so on. In some cases, we may have to look into providing home care options. This is, again, something very common in the European countries. We see that patients have home care options. Maybe the countries are smaller, not something very prevalent in many other countries. So then again, thinking about how can trials use home care options as an alternative to providing that best level of support and care to the subjects and the participants. And of course, as we have seen the reliance on telemedicine throughout this pandemic, that option must be available to the patient. If they have a distress, if they have any AE, they should be able to reach out. For their routine visits, they should have telemedicine calls with the study coordinator, with the nurse, etc. Ultimately, using all of these components, we can empower our patients, we can educate our patients, and all of this also means that we are going to have better enrollment in our trials. On to my next slide. So this whole step of embracing the technology starts right from the beginning of how we develop our protocol, how we are going to make telemedicine a part of the protocol. So the whole design of the protocol is now going to be different. From the beginning, we are going to think at that very inception stage on how we can have a remote trial altogether. Then we are going to have ICFs. We are going to rewrite the ICFs in a way that patients can still participate in the trial, and they have access to the ICFs. They are able to sign these ICFs remotely. If they have questions about the informed consent, they have time with the study coordinator, with the nurse, or with the PI, and they are getting all of their questions answered before they decide to participate or not participate in the trial. Sites are equipped and they have the right regulations for a remote e-consent. They have the right softwares that we can continue to do remote site monitoring, that they are using more of electronic TMFs, so that maybe some sites are still using paper as their filing methods, but now we are encouraging sites to use more electronic EMRs, and so that we can access those remotely. Of course, home healthcare options, as we talked about earlier, and using eCOA and ePro just to make sure that we are having these touch base and points and regular live feedback coming in from the patient about their health, and just making it a fully digital experience for the subjects. Okay, So ultimately, if we try to kind of wrap this whole experience up, I would say that the best approach is to simplify, change, and to adapt. We have to think outside of the box and come up with more innovative ideas and solutions on how we can best support our pharmaceutical industry, our trials, and our patients. This is a great opportunity to bring in change. Some of the changes that we are seeing now, we were hoping to see it in the next 10, 15 years maybe, but now we are forced and we are accelerated into this new era where we are going to be more digital and more remote in our approach. And then to find solutions that work for everyone, not just for the patients and the clinical trials, but also for our pharmaceutical companies, or also for our regulatory agencies across the world. So basically, decentralized and virtual trials are here to stay, and it's up to us on how we can make it more user-friendly, more suitable to our patients, and just enhance and improvise on those lessons that we have learned in the past year. Again, as now we are seeing, there is an old normal, there is a new normal. In the United States, a good percent of our population is already vaccinated. We are seeing more and more institutions are now open at full capacity to work. We are also seeing people that are beginning to travel and use airplanes and other modes of public transportation. So things are definitely moving towards the new normal, I would say. Now we are past that fear of the pandemic, staying indoors, staying enclosed. We are still watchful. We are still making sure that we are following some kind of social measures so that others stay safe. But at the same time, we are trying to get back into some kind of normal routine where we can step out of the house without being fearful and conduct the daily tasks and the daily chores. So with that said, I would like to conclude. As more and more people are becoming vaccinated, we are getting a better understanding and grasping more of the COVID-19. What is going to be the future going forward? What is going to be the future of our research industry? Our industry's ability to overcome the challenges and then seize all these opportunities that have come our way in the last 1 year has given us a renewed sense of hope that we can live like this, or that the way we did roughly for around 15 months ago, that is changing and we are stepping into the new normal. So I think we don't know all the answers yet, and that is okay. All I think we have to keep in mind is what lies ahead for us and how can we harness the expertise and the resources to keep us all safe and keep the researches going on, continuing on in the coming year, in 2021 and 2022. So I think that's just continues to be an ongoing discussion within our companies, within our societies, and globally. So with that, I come to conclude my presentation. Any questions for me?
So it looks like one has come into the queue, and I don't know if you can see it directly or not.
Did it make a difference in COVID response time if WuXi held a contract or not with the vendor service providers? That was my question. Yes, I think it definitely made a difference if we had a call.
Oh, Rachna, I think your audio is
Right.
Giving some.
Maybe if you shut down your video and just stay on with audio, that might help.
Is it better now?
No, it still has an echo.
There's an echo. I can read it for you, Rachna. And then in the meantime, I think if you want to just turn off your screen share over there. Perfect. So George from Trial Card is asking, did it make a difference in your COVID response time if WuXi held the contract or not with other vendor service providers?
Yes, I think it did make a difference. We have partnerships and we have contracts with many CRO partners across the globe, which we use for our services. And it definitely helps because we know their work patterns, we have established relationships, and during these times as well, we were able to get our studies timelines expedited in spite of all of these challenges that we were facing, just because we had these contracts held in place. So yes, definitely I would say my answer is yes, that it did make a difference, a positive difference in fact. And then I see as a next question, did sponsor expect WuXi to lead and provide solutions, or did sponsor have their own ideas? That's a very good solution. I think WuXi likes to work hand in hand with the sponsors. So sometimes sponsors have their ideas, and based on our experience, we come up with our ideas. Sorry, it's a terrible audio. My apologies.
Maybe I think you might have two devices open because I can hear myself as well when I speak from your end.
I'm not sure about that. It's still better now.
Yeah, no, it's still a little bit of a challenge.
Okay, my apologies. I will provide my response. I know Beck is on. Beck, do you think you can maybe provide an answer on behalf?
This is Len. I'm thinking to spare the audience, the audio is pretty bad, but we might just want to thank you and transition Sam over to the networking session. Does that make sense?
Yep, and again, that's another. It's going to be, I believe, our final break, and then we're going to have 4 back-to-back presentations in the afternoon. So we'll take a quick break from 2 to 2:30. If you haven't had a chance to grab, your afternoon coffee, feel free. We'll continue the afternoon with 4 presentations, followed by our panel discussion. Again, if you haven't had a chance to visit the booths, this is now the right time to do so. And I will transfer everyone to the networking room. Again, please visit the lounge booth.